It's never fast enough for me, it's never fast enough for probably anybody. We need to make it as fast as we can, and we need to look after the people that need the most help first. And that's what we're trying to do. There's people fall through the cracks. You know, we know that. And there's cases that are ongoing right now where we have found out that somebody's fallen through a crack, and we will reach out to that person and, you know, get them out of that crack individually, case by case. And we'll keep doing that. I think you gave me 5 minutes, Mike, I've probably already violated that. So, you know, in good faith, we're all there to work together, and I'm no different than Jimmy Kay or Peter or anybody else. We all care about veterans, and we're all trying to do our best. And if we're gonna disagree, that's cool. But let's do it rationally, logically, with all the facts on the table. Thanks very much.
Thank Lori for coming and speaking to us today. And would now invite Peter Stauffer from Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition to come speak on behalf of the NDP.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thanks to everyone who organized this evening. With my colleague Sylvain Chaplin, the Deputy Critic of Veterans Affairs for the NDP, and my colleague Murray Rankin from British Columbia as well. The three of us are here to basically give our dissertation on the Equitas lawsuit, as well as a few issues where we think that Parliament should be going in terms of veterans. First of all, I want to say hello to Lauren. Lauren, I haven't seen you for a while, buddy. It's good to see you again. A great member of the Army, Navy, Air Force Veterans Association, just a fabulous guy. Lauren, great to see you again. And Sean, you too, buddy. I'll talk to you later. But first of all, I want to thank Michel Drapeau. Some of you may know the great work, the unbelievable work he did for Sheila Fines and her family, and the emotional roller coaster that went through. And I don't think there's a person in Canada who could have handled it with the grace, the knowledge, the expertise, and the compassion that Sheila required and her family required regarding the suicide of her son. And so, Michelle, I want to publicly thank you very much for the great work you did with her and her family. Thank you. And to my colleague Laurie Honda, again, thank you. Again, you yourself, as a veteran, served your country with great distinction. I thank you very much for your continued service. And some of you may or may not know, but before Laurie was a member of Parliament, he actually communicated with me a few times from Edmonton, where he was, and he gave you some great advice at that time. But
you did.
Exactly. Well, folks, to be honest with you, with the Equitas lawsuit, what I'm disappointed about, and this isn't a slant against the government, but it is, I guess, in that way, is the fact that it went to court in the first place. In 2001, in the Dennis Manouche case, I raised the issue with the Liberal government at that time that this could have been settled for less than $100 million, the system class action. It could have been settled for less than $100 million, with no legal fees, well, very little legal fees. The answer was no. Repeatedly no for every year after that. In 2006, we had a change of government. We asked the same questions. The answer was no. Finally, in 2007, Mr. Manouche took it to court, and we realized what happened. $888 million lawsuit with an additional $1 billion on ELB and everything else. And I give the government credit. This is a lot of people don't forget this. The Conservative government of the day added on to that lawsuit, not just the $888 million for the CISA concern, but they also added ELB and other concerns as well, and they got to give credit for that. It unfortunately took a lawsuit to do that, but the fact is $35 million was spent on legal fees. What would $35 million do for Dave Hawkins, a gentleman that was released prematurely from the military? This is the part that frustrates me the most. I'm not a lawyer, no offense, Colonel Drapeau, but the reality is $35 million was wasted, in my view, when it could have easily been negotiated behind the scenes with the current minister of the day, but it was not. Now we have RCMP veterans going through the lawsuit in the exact same situation with the exact same law firm of McInnes Cooper. We are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars taking disabled RCMP veterans to court on the exact same situation as CISA. Why? Why are we doing this? We're talking over 1,200 members of the disabled RCMP veteran. This is the part I don't understand. I've been a member of Parliament for 16 and a half years. I've been the Veterans Critic for 16 and a half years. I do not understand why they have to go to court when something can be easily resolved at the table. Doesn't matter who the minister is or what the government was. It's the same situation. On the Equitas one, Peter Milliken, John Fraser, both former speakers of the House of Commons, are working on this. Bill Blakey, long-term member of Parliament with the NDP. So you have a member from each party working with Equitas on this particular suit. The suit seems quite clear. And at the end of the day, I cannot tell you how disappointed I was when the Crown attorneys representing the government said, and I'm paraphrasing now, there is no moral or fiduciary responsibility to care for those you put in harm's way. So immediately we did a press conference right after that. And my question was very simple. Very simple. Do you, to the government, do you or do you not have a moral, legal, social, and fiduciary responsibility to care for those you put in harm's way? 2 press conferences, a personal phone call, a letter, and a question in the House of Commons. I still don't have the answer. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not advising the minister, and I say this with great respect to Mr. Fantino. Mr. Hahn is absolutely correct. He cares. All my colleagues in the House of Commons and in the Senate, they do care. But there is something that I do not understand of why you cannot answer that question. Because every person that I've ever known that served the military and the RCMP, we're told, if anything happens to you, we will care for you and your family. That's the unlimited liability. And I always assumed that we as parliamentarians, regardless of party affiliation, have the ultimate responsibility to you and your needs all the way to and including the headstone. If legally that is not true, now Mr. Drupeau can answer this better than I can, but can you imagine if there is no legal obligation to care for those you put in harm's way? What does that mean then? Is DVA a charitable case? Is it $3.4 billion of taxpayers' charity to help veterans, RCMP and their families? I don't think so. I simply don't know. And I'm asking for the answer. I don't have the expertise to understand as to why the government of the day will not answer the question. There has to be something behind that question that they're either afraid of or they're concerned about some legal obligation they may have. But I look at it this way. Laurie served this country for over 30 years. Michel Drapeau served. Michael Blais served. Many of you in this room have served your country. You've allowed me and my family to have a good night's sleep. I haven't had one since the original Woodstock, but that's a personal problem. I won't hold that against you. But the reality is, and my colleague, Mr. Karagianis, lost a relative in Afghanistan. The reality is, this is personal and it hits home to all of us. But I do not understand why the government can't answer that question. And my fear is that Equitas or the RCMP or the next case down the road, which we don't know of, is going to involve millions of dollars of legal fees. And we don't have that kind of money in Canada. We're in a deficit right now. That means we're borrowing the money to fight veterans and RCMP and their families in this case. When you think about it, we're not in surplus, we are in deficit. So I do not understand the logic of that. I've always assumed as a union person negotiating collective agreements with the government, I know this is simplifying it, that you could always reach an agreement if you talk to each other, regardless of your political persuasion, regardless of where you are. Having to go to arbitration always ends up costing a fortune. When you're in a divorce situation, you go to the lawyers, it's going to cost you a fortune. And maybe I'm simplifying the comparison in this regard, but I just don't understand why we end up doing this to ourselves. And it's not a question that, and Laurie was absolutely right, it's not a question that nobody on either side cares. They do care. I will never ever question the sentimentality and the heart of every single one of us in the House of Commons, either currently serving or before or in the future. The problem is in the end of the day, it boils down to money. That's really what it boils down to. Personally, I think the DVA budget is woefully inadequate to meet the needs that we have to do. Woefully inadequate. Now, we can always argue what that should be. We can always argue, regarding part of the grants, what the benefit should entitle to. If you're severely injured, if you got PTSD, if you're partially injured, if you require this, that, and everything, we can always argue what those benefits should be. And that is a fair and honest, respectful argument. We can do that. But the first thing you have to admit is, do you have an obligation? Is there a sacred obligation? Is there a legal obligation? I don't think we have time to wait for the courts to decide that for us. We should be able to decide that among ourselves. And if we do collectively agree as a parliament that we have a legal and sacred and social and moral and fiduciary responsibility to care for those you ask to put in harm's way, if we can all agree to that, great. Then we can discuss and argue and debate what they should be. That's fair. That's fair discussion. Because I guarantee you, if we were the government tomorrow, I guarantee you we would not solve all the veterans issues in a heartbeat. It simply will not be done. I cannot stand here and say, vote NDP, will solve all your problems. That would be a lie, and it wouldn't be true. But, having said that, there is no reason why collectively we can't put the shields down and work together on this. That's why I'm very proud of the fact that Laurie Hahn and my colleague Sylvain and Mr. Karagiannis were on the Veterans Affairs Committee. We were reviewing the charter. And I will be pushing very hard with my colleagues to ensure that the new charter we come up with, the rewritten one, because I was there with Jack Stagg in 2004 and 2005, the late Deputy Minister. Jack Stagg worked with me very, very closely. We had many one-on-one meetings on this one. I'm probably the only one on the committee right now that can honestly say Jack Stagg and I worked very closely on the new Veterans Charter, and we supported the charter because when you compare apples to apples, it is better than it was before. But, having said that, there are many faults with the charter that have come up recently, and one of the major reasons why Anavets, the Legion, and many other organizations and parliaments supported the charter was the fact that it was a living document, which meant very clearly, and Albina Gariani, Greg Thompson, Mr. Blackburn, Mr. Blaney, and now Mr. Fantino have all said this is a living document. It can be open, and we can review it and fix the problems. The first time it was open was in 5 years, after the fact. Far too long. This living document needs to be completely opened up. Every single aspect of it should be opened up. We're fair and honest, and as what Mr. Hunt said, let's put the facts on the table. Let's put it all out there for everyone to see. And at the end of the day, brothers and sisters, what I would like to see is a revamped charter, a new charter, written for and by veterans and their families. So at this time, on behalf of all of us in the NDP, I thank you very much for coming today, and God bless each and every one of you.